come on. Hey, there we are. Hey, this is Mr. A, and today's lesson is going to be on determining the type of compound it is. Because if you know what type it is, then you know how to write the formula. You know what strategy to apply. Heretofore, I've always said, okay, we're learning type 1, so here's a bunch of type 1 problems. Here's how you solve type 1 problems, and then you've applied that strategy to solve the type 2. Okay, here's type 2. Here's a bunch of type 2 problems. Here's a strategy for solving type 2. Go solve a bunch of type 2 problems. Okay. Now I'm going to give you a bunch of 1 and type 2 problems together, and you go, which strategy do I apply? Well, the first trick to that is knowing what type it is. So I'm going to flip over into presentation mode, and I am going to do my best to explain it to you. All right, so Mr. A is going to do some explaining. He's going to present his entire screen, and I'm going to use my overhead document camera to show you a few things. Okay, so if I shrink this, and then I open this sucker up right here. Whoa, wow, that was pretty cool. Okay, so I have all my little pieces of paper cutouts, and this may be what's going on in your mind. Oh, Mr. A, I'm so confused about type 1, type 2, type 3, binary. I don't know what's going on. It's all just a big mess to me in my brain. All right, so we're going to help you figure out what it is, and by drawing the biologists call it a dichotomous key. You might call it a flow chart or some sort of a decision matrix. Maybe you've seen this before, especially if you're in computer programming. It's called a flow chart. You might have seen these tools on Microsoft Word or something like that. So we are going to draw a flow chart for you to help you decide what type of compound it is. Okay, so what's this guy's name anyway? His name is Harry, of course. His name is Harry. Harry's going to sit right over here. He's my happy eraser. And we are going to start our decision tree right over here. So we have questions that need to be answered. And then based on the results of those questions, then we can identify what the compound is, and ultimately end up with the different types. So basically what I'm doing is, maybe you could think of it like I have this big black box here, right? Black box. And it's like a machine, right? And so I'm going to start right here, and then at the end of the process, I am going to be able to determine whether my compound is a type 1, type 2, type 3, or type 4. So we're going to take a detailed look at what's inside the box that helps us to determine if for whatever compound that we have, say maybe let's do like, I don't know, lithium oxide. That's a good one to start off with. Oh, that's not quite right, is it? Because it'll actually take 2 lithiums to match up with 1 oxygen, okay? So let's just design this black box not to only do just one. What if it is something like calcium carbonate, okay? Something like that, or maybe nitrogen oxide, or maybe iron sulfate, okay? So these, I think, are all different types. And so we've got to figure out which types those are, okay? I guess I could leave those up there, and that kind of gives us somewhere to go. Okay, so Harry's going to help me erase my black box here, and let's build the flow chart, okay? So we're going to start right here, and the first question that we are going to ask is, are there more than 2 different elements? Okay, so for example, calcium carbonate. there's not only calcium, but there's carbon and oxygen. So is that more than two? Why, yes, it is, Mr. A. So if there are more than two, then we know that it is going to be polyatomic. So in the flowchart world, this is the question. And if the answer is yes, then you go this way. And if the answer is no, then you go this way. Okay. So more than two different elements? Yes, it's a polyatomic. And let's see, the polyatomics are type 4. Here's my stop sign. And we're done. So this is all we would need to be able to determine what this one was. It's a polyatomic, right? If there's not more than two different elements, then we call it, it's what we call a binary compound, meaning it's just lithium and oxygen, or nitrogen and oxygen, or iron and sulfur. So you can see that all these three are binary compounds. Okay, so the circle is the start, the diamond is the question, and the squares are just kind of where we're at now, and then the stop sign is where we stop. So right now we're at the binary level, and we need to ask ourselves another question, and if we're going to go any further. Is there a metal? Okay, if there is not a metal, then we know it to be covalent, right? Because if there is a metal, then it have to be ionic, because ionic compounds are those that contain are the bonding of a metal to a non-metal. So if there is a metal, then we know it is ionic. So yes, ionic, no, covalent. And if it's covalent, well, we know at that point that it is a type 3. Okay, so we can stop. So we were successful at determining the type of compound that calcium carbonate was. Of the three remaining, which one is covalent? Oh, I know, Mr. A. It's nitrogen oxide. Yes, you're absolutely right. So we can scratch that off the list, and that would be the type for nitrogen oxide, because it's two nonmetals. Nitrogen and oxygen are nonmetals. All right. So now then, there are two different types remaining, and there are two different types of compounds that have metals in it. So we need to ask ourselves one more question. Is the metal from group 1, 2, or 3? And if the answer is, I got to think about this. If the answer is no, that means it's a transition metal, because the transition metals, let me grab my chart over here. The transition metals, the transition metals are those metals that are in between here, right? 1, 2, and 3, we know how to deal with. The transition metals that are in groups 3 through 12, we don't know how to deal with those because some of them have more than one oxidation number. So those are what we call our special ones, and we have a special table for the special ions that help us to determine the oxidation number. So those are special, and those are our type 2. Which one of the remaining compounds here is now a type 2? Oh, I know, Mr. A. Of course, iron is a transition metal. It is in, I don't know what group it is in right now. Let's see, iron. Let's see, iron is somewhere over here. Oh, why can't I find it? Oh, it's in group 8, right? So that's not 1, 2, or 13. So it is special, and it's the type 2. And that brings us to our last remaining, the easiest ones of all, the type 1s, where you have a plain old metal from groups 1, 2, or 13 combined with a non-metal, right? And so that takes care of all the 4 different types. Now, if you are scrambling to write this down, let me make sure. I hope everything's in view here. Okay. it would be a good idea for you to write this down. This would be the kind of thing that you would want to use on a test in order to help you get the right answers. And this is the thing that I want you to use in order to do the practice. So for practice, I've given you 20, count them, 20 different compounds to type. That's all I'm asking you to do. I'm not asking you to write the formulas for them. I just want you to type them. And I've provided the answers because this is practice. So try to do it and then see if you get the right answers. You might find that you're having problems with a particular type, and then you might have questions that you want to ask me. But this is the way that we make the decision on what type it is. In years past, I've asked students, this was a student project for this unit, make a decision tree, make a flow chart. And it worked pretty good for those kids that put independent time in on it. But usually when one kid figured it out, they shared it. And it's like, okay, I know, everybody knows what it is now, right? So, okay, that is my presentation on that. Is there any questions before I take this screen off? Okay. All right, good. Hopefully that was a good explanation of what was going on. So I'm going to go back to this mode. I'm going to stop sharing. Hey, I'm back. Yay. And all right. And I can unpin myself. Okay. So we are still recording. I've finished my presentation. Any questions about the typing flowchart or anything else that you have that you would like to share out? Okay, well, good. I'm going to stop the recording and then I'll give you another opportunity to ask me questions. Maybe you just don't want to have it on the